Here we go. It's Global 2.3. We're still in the Paleolithic era. Got a little blurred lines playing in the background. We're going to talk about the blurred lines between the different hominid species today. Thought the song was fitting. That is Blurred Lines. Fade it out, and let's get going here. All right, it should be a quick little lesson here on this Paleolithic time period. Remember, Paleolithic refers to the Old Stone Age. Should I write it again? Why not? This is the Old Stone Age. Sweet ass Mr. C. All right, we're going to take a look at things from the point of view of a psychologist and a sociologist today, and we're specifically talking about these upright hominid species and the interactions and the mindset. Of course, social interactions would be what a sociologist is interested in, and the mindset, sort of the way that the individual brain worked on these different early hominid upright walking species. That would be what a psychologist would be interested in. And we are going to focus in on the two most recent hominid species. We could get back into, oh man, there's some species I can't even pronounce. Forget that. Let's focus on the most recent hominid species, reaching back into Europe about 70,000 years before Christ, all the way through about 40,000 years before Christ, so a 30,000 year time period. That's a long time, by the way. I mean, our calendar is only at the year 2000 since AD. And we're talking about a 30,000 year time period. And the two most recent hominid, upright walking hominid species that we're going to take a look at are Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal. Okay? And when we examine the mindset and the social interactions of these two groups, we're probably going to want to focus in on what a psychologist or what a sociologist would refer to as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what we're going to represent Maslow's hierarchy of needs with here is a little pyramid. Now, I'm going to show you this isn't Mr. Conley making crazy stuff up here. If I swing back behind the camera, I should be able to shift over to my tab. And we're going to take a look at, very clearly, Maslow's hierarchy of needs right here. This is a real thing that psychologists and sociologists use to explain why obviously there weren't psychologists and sociologists for Neanderthals. So when we're looking at this thing, we're really thinking about ourselves, which is more of a modern incarnation. We Homo sapiens, a descendant of the Cro-Magnon. And we sort of think about, what do we as Homo sapiens need, right, to survive in this world? And this is the hierarchy of needs. You'll notice down at the bottom, there's some basic physiological needs like, food and water. Moving up the pyramid, you probably are interested in staying safe, right? Security of our body and perhaps of like a job. But definitely security becomes a big need. And the idea with this pyramid, if I shift back out of here, let's come back to the camera here real quick and we'll get some stuff on the board. The idea with the sort of pyramid idea is that if you have a crack in the lower levels of your pyramid, what of course happens? If I cannot attain the bottom of the pyramid because it develops a crack, and this would be our physiological needs here. Our physical needs like food and water. If there is a crack in the pyramid, then the rest doesn't matter. It all comes toppling down, right? And so we sort of build ourselves and we build our societies, and psychologically we build our brains to fill these needs first. And I think we could probably come to some loose agreement that regardless of the species, Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal, they both had a high desire to fill these physiological needs for food and water. We see it with the artifacts that they left behind that we took a look at in a previous lesson. Again, swinging back to the pictures here, if we look at some of these artifacts they left behind, we very clearly see, oh, here is good old Neanderthal again. I think we saw this yesterday. Short, squatty, muscular Cro-Magnon. I don't know if he was this good looking, guys, but I mean, he's tall, little bit taller than the Neanderthal there, little slimmer build, not quite as bulky. And these are the types of tools Neanderthal was producing. And what do we glean from this, right? If we look at these artifacts, we know that hunting food source, right? And if we examine where they lived like a geographer might, we know that they live near water, and we can glean that this is meeting their sort of desire for food, and perhaps even using that those sort of spearheads as a mechanism for safety, keeping you safe from other animals or other species, perhaps. So let's not get back to those here in a minute. And if we look at, there's the skull that we looked at yesterday of the two. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to come back here. Let's get back to that camera. Come on, let's cooperate here. If I come back here, we see that looking at those artifacts, we can definitely tell that Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon, with their sort of spearheads, definitely were interested in food and water. And we could probably even translate this to safety, right? Both safety of mind and body. And so they looked to fill those needs first. Now, here's where we start to get some blurred lines. That's why we played the song. Here is where things get interesting, somewhere around here. If you can build your physiological needs and the safety of your mind and body, then Maslow's hierarchy of needs say that we humans, we Cro-Magnons, we Homo sapiens, right, descendant of the Cro-Magnon, what we are interested in next is sort of like love and affection. The sort of idea that we have a closeness or an intimacy with others of our kind. And we look for intimacy. Okay? And with Neanderthals, there isn't a lot of evidence of that, right? Whereas, do we see this evidence perhaps in the archaeological finds of the Cro-Magnon and the Homo sapiens? Well, in fact, we do. You saw me click through the pictures earlier, right? And here's our love and a belonging. And we start to see some more artistic interpretations, which you covered with anthropology yesterday. And so the Cro-Magnon tended to have a little bit more artistic interpretation of things, which perhaps would even be more of sort of a self-actualization, using art to be creative, might even be the top of the pyramid. And here is the intimacy that we're talking about here as sort of a ritualistic burial where Homo sapiens are proven, through these artifacts and these sort of skeletal remains, these findings of these skeletal remains, they're proven that Homo sapiens buried other Homo sapiens with artifacts or trinkets or goods that they may have found intimate to their being. Almost like you were, if you died, they sort of had this belief that you could bring these valuable things from your life with you to the other side. Obviously, with ritualistic burials like that, there is a level of intimacy, there is a level of respect for others, and there is a level of creativity and even sort of a self-actualization that there might be something else out there on the other side. All of those things are sort of checked off, and we start to make the assumption that perhaps while Neanderthals really struggled to just meet their physical needs and their safety needs, Neanderthals didn't really build their safety and their physical needs in a way that allowed them to develop love and esteem and self-actualization to sort of build the complete hierarchy of needs, if you will. So coming back to our camera, let's finish this off. We have the love and the esteem and the self-actualization, the creativity. I gotta write that one out. All right, the idea that you can be creative, or the idea that you have respect for yourself and for others. These needs on the hierarchy of needs, they tended to be strictly needs that we can glean from artifacts of Cro-Magnon. And the Neanderthals seem to have struggled to some degree. If I can change colors, the Neanderthals seem to struggle with meeting their safety and physiological needs as well, right? And because they could not completely stay safe, whether it was from Cro-Magnons or from other animal threats, because they struggled with their safety and physiological needs, they sort of maxed out and kind of hit the wall, and they didn't really develop much past 40,000 BC. And so what we see is the Neanderthals sort of check out. And they are done as a species by about 40,000 BC, whereas Cro-Magnon will continue to develop and continue to build off these hierarchy of needs. That's what a sociologist, that's what a psychologist would be interested in. And we've got the evidence through artifacts to sort of build that argument and understand it in that way. Thanks for checking in. That's just about going to wrap up our Paleolithic era. You join me next time. We're going to enter into a whole new modern era called the Neolithic era. We're not going to talk about the old Stone Age. We're going to focus on the new Stone Age. Thanks for joining me.